the meeting and getting it started on time. This is the Trails Committee, the West Bath Trails Committee meeting. My name is Helen Hudson. I'm the chair of this committee. You guys can go ahead and introduce yourselves.
I'm Kayla Sarah. I'm the vice chair.
And I'm Rob Webb. I'm the secretary.
And I'll make a motion to go ahead and begin the meeting.
All in favor?
The second thing I'd like to do is actually make a motion to move new business up, begin with that, and have it be followed by public comment. Then have the old business. We can do more public comment if you guys don't want to leave, if you want to hang out for the rest of the meeting.
Second.
Great. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so the new business, and I think we have such a full house tonight. Usually our committee meetings just have a few people, it's not just us. Is regarding the Hamilton Sanctuary on Foster Point Road and some changes that are happening there. I created just a small overview of what has happened there, and then I'm going to hand the reins over to these folks from Maine Audubon to kind of explain from their perspective what's happening and to answer all of our questions. So the sanctuary is located at 681 Foster's Point Road in West Bath. It's 86 acres and has 2.75 miles of trails. It was established in 1987 at the request of Millicent Hamilton, who lived there for 40 years. For the past 36 years, Glenn and Marianne Warner have acted as caretakers living on site in what used to be Millicent's house, and they've been maintaining the trails, organizing volunteers, and managing the parking lot, which includes putting up a chain fence every night and then taking it down each morning at dawn. The community and thus this committee was informed by the caretakers that starting this August, they will no longer be employed, and that the caretaker's house at 681, Millicent's former house, will be sold. And so I invited folks from Maine Audubon, and they've agreed to come here tonight. We have Judy Camuso, who's the president of Maine Audubon, and we have Noah Gleason-Hart, who's the director of properties and management in Maine Audubon. And I'm sorry, will you introduce
Michael Catania, the past board chair and the chair of our properties committee.
Okay, wonderful. And so we would love to just hear from you guys what the changes are, what brought them about, and what the plan is going to be going forward in managing the property.
Great. Well, thank you, and thank you all for being here. And I think we've heard from some of you individually, so I'm glad to get the chance to talk to you all face to face rather than over email and letters. So again, I'm Judy Camuso. I'm relatively new president to Maine Audubon, and this is our properties director, Noah, and our past president and also president of the properties, or chair of the properties committee, Michael. So it's been about a year in the works where Maine Audubon made the decision, as many conservation organizations have done across the state, to move away from the caretaker model. And so we, or Maine Audubon then, I wasn't here actually, but Maine Audubon worked with Glenn and Marianne and shared with them last August that in a year that the plan was to no longer have a caretaker and to remove that sort of from the property management approach to how we manage all of our sanctuaries. So I should also say Maine Audubon has 8 sanctuaries across the state. This is the only one that has or has ever had a caretaker on site. And as many organizations are realizing, maintaining older homes are challenging for an organization, and we'd much rather, the decision was made, we'd much rather put that money and that time into the actual property and the trails on site. And so 3 years ago, we hired a land steward, Liz. Probably many of you have met Liz. She's done a lot of work on the trails out there and has been diligent about maintaining those trails. Has also built that 100-foot, 140-foot boardwalk trail that's out there now. So that's all part of the investment for the land steward position that we have. And so our plan, when we worked with Glenn and Marianne initially, we did offer them the opportunity to purchase the house if they chose. They declined that offer. And so once they declined that offer, we started the process of moving to sell the property. So we have, of course, I'll just answer some of the questions up front that I got in the letter. We have, of course, consulted our in-house attorney as well as an outside firm to review the will and make sure that this is legal in accordance with the will. Of course it is. We've also worked with the Kennebec Estuary Land Trust, who holds the easement over the property. They are also completely comfortable with this process. So we are confident that the proposal is perfectly legal and in accordance with the will that was bequested the property to Maine Audubon. So with that in mind, we are planning to maintain the property. We will continue to have a presence here. We have a full-time land steward. Noah or Liz will take over the stewardship committee, work with the community on sort of the ongoing programs that happen here in West Bath. So I want everyone to know we're still absolutely committed to the property, committed to maintaining the trails, maintaining the presence here, and doing everything we can to make sure that the property is essentially, that the neighbors feel really no difference in how that property is used or managed. So is there anything else, Michael, or Noah, you think we should add?
Just to maybe add to that, in accordance with Melissa's wishes, there was a person who held a right of
That's right.
first refusal on the house.
Yeah.
It used to be Ann Johnson, now it's Ann Hayden. So we also talked to her. She has released her right of first refusal,
Yeah.
Which makes it possible for us to list the property.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, I think the other element I would add is, as part of the legal review, the attorneys reviewed the town documents that are on hand to understand any sort of permitting or permission that went through the zoning process and the approval of that sanctuary, and also found that there were no limitations to our sale of the house.
And I guess maybe just add too, that the easement that's held by the land trust does not include the house.
Right,
It's across the street.
yeah.
So what we are proposing to do is to create a lot, the minimum lot size that West Bath allows in this zone, which is 2 acres, that would carve out the house. So we would still retain ownership of the parking area, but the house on a 2-acre lot right next to the parking area, it would be put on the market for sale. And if anybody's interested, let us know.
So that's our plan. Happy to take questions. Yeah.
A concern of the neighbors is to what extent there will be any control of the property parking area without caretakers there. And toward that end, has there been any reports in the history of Hamilton Sanctuary of what we'll term bad behavior? Have Glenn or Marianne in the past 30-odd years reported anything?
Sure. So I'll say a few things. So you most of you don't know me, but in my previous life, I was commissioner of Maine Fish and Wildlife. We owned and maintained about 140,000 acres of conservation land across the state, many of them with parking lots and public access, and none of them with caretakers. So we do have a good deal of experience with managing properties that don't have a person on site, a living resident. And I would, suggest, or I'll share that I was also myself, my first husband and I were caretakers at the Wells Reserve for 2 years, a lifetime ago, back in the early 90s. And that position, I think they had 2 caretakers after us, but they also eliminated that role. So I think back in the 80s when this proposal was first, the project was first proposed, a caretaker was a reasonable idea. Most conservation organizations have stepped away from having caretakers on site. I don't know, I'm sure there are a few examples, but I know certainly the Nature Conservancy doesn't have any, Appalachian Mountain Club doesn't have any, IFNW doesn't have any, Bureau of Parks and Land don't have caretakers on their sites anymore. In fact, many of the BPL's remote sites don't even have a ranger nearby. So I think we will certainly do our best to have a presence here on a regular basis through Liz and Noah and through the Stewardship Committee. Is it going to be perfect all the time? No. Was it perfect with Glenn and Marianne? No. Are there times when Glenn and when I was caretaker, we would go on vacation and, the gate wouldn't get open or closed, or people, whatever, that sort of stuff happens, right? So, I recognize it's gonna be a change, but I do think people in this area are used to this parking lot now. It's not a new project, it's not a new property that's suddenly available for people to use. I think, I don't anticipate there will be a substantial change in use between now with the caretaker on site and when there isn't a caretaker on site. I think we have there been incidents in the past? Of course there have. I think there have been a few times when we've called in the district game warden, Evan Franklin, I think is your game warden here, and Lori Coolis probably covers some of the time. And if we need to work with Warden Service in the beginning to have a more close relationship, we can certainly do that. But I don't anticipate that there will be a substantial or any real change in use. Our goal would be for that you all to not see any change in the pattern of use or the type of use that you experience right now. And that's our approach with our East Point Sanctuary, our Borstone Mountain Sanctuary, Joseph B. Newman, which is not far from you. So that is our approach across all of our properties.
And I can just speak to the very sort of localized level, which is that a lot of my work on a daily basis is about relationships, right? I make a major effort to be a part of these communities just like these sanctuaries are. I brought a huge stack of business cards. I'm happy to hand those out, and folks are absolutely welcome to reach out to me at any time. To me, the change, if there is one, is the number you call if you see something, right? In the past, you might have called Glenn and Marianne, and now it would be that you're calling Liz or I.
Let me add too that we're not proposing to demolish the house, we're proposing to put it into private hands. Increasingly, we've been using more and more of our resources to maintain a house, which is not really our mission, and we would rather enhance the property, make the trails better, but presumably there will be someone in the house, so there'll be eyes and ears if there's a problem. There will be someone that can call the authorities. Pretty much the same as Glenn and Marianne have been able to do. Having a caretaker that doesn't prevent something from happening, it just gives you eyes and ears, and there will still be eyes and ears near the parking lot.
Do the owners, potential owners, recognize that responsibility?
Well, I think it's
No,
we don't know who they are yet, so.
I know,
But
but
presumably,
in your sales brochure, will you mention that we expect you to be eyes and ears?
I would expect that it would be in their interest to be in eyes and ears. If there's gonna be teenagers having a beer party next to their house, I think they're gonna be more concerned than any of us will be. And we don't have to worry about them. They'll wanna call the authorities.
So one of them can't work, they have to stay home during the day.
So close open during the day.
It may be a second home for people too, they're not there all the time.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
I do have a question. So as I understand it, there were funds set aside in a trust for the maintenance and upkeep of the home. What is the status of that trust at this point in terms of funding and the funds there, if there are still any being used to care for the home? What happens to those funds?
Those funds are still there, and Millicent was clear in her will what would happen should the sale of the house or any of the property occur. So those funds are still in the trust. The organization has used funds over the years, of course, for the maintenance of the trails, for the work on the house. We spent a couple $100,000 on, is it the KISS property?
The acquisition of the
The
KISS
acquisition
property.
of the property.
And so the sale of the home then, the proceeds would not go into the general funds of the Audubon Society. It would go into the funds specifically for this.
The proceeds will go to continue to manage the property.
This part,
Yes.
only this property.
I'm not sure that that's the case, but that's
That's the Just let me finish asking, if I may finish asking my questions. Is there a, I have not seen the trust. Is it possible to, is it something that is public that can be shared in terms of the terms and how the trust is structured and detailed?
it's not in a separate trust, it's
Yeah.
just in a restricted.
It was a
account.
request.
Yeah.
And the will is a public document, so yes, you
Okay, well,
can certainly access that.
okay, it says trust.
It was left in trust.
Okay,
Interest.
so the funds are segregated and separate from
Yes.
other funds?
Millicent left us about $50,000 to
Right,
manage not just the house, but the property.
correct.
We have spent way more than that over the years doing that. So we put a lot of our own general funds into it. So when Noah does an annual budget, we don't build a trust for the time that he spends managing the property or things like that.
No, I understand that. My concern is that the sale of a 2-acre parcel in that location is going to yield a large sum of money for the Audubon. And my concern is that those funds
Sure.
somehow make their way to other
Sure.
areas where Millicent provided that home for the trust for the maintenance of this particular property, and that those funds should be allocated and stay in that way. So I'm just trying to understand
Yeah.
how this is going to work
I think,
and what parameters are established and set
I think
to
it's
that goal.
fair to say to date, the organization has spent more money on the property than the trust has yielded to date. And just with the sale, you know, of the acquisition of the KISS property was $700,000, 200, 300 was before
That was
any of our
the one.
times. But, so the estimate for the appraised value is around 400,000. We draw about no more than 4% off of an endowment, like, you know, so that would be around, what's my math there, 20,000 a year, $25,000 a year. And Audubon has not ever to date charged any of the staff time associated with managing the property. So that doesn't include, you know, the cost for our land steward, for Noah's time, for any of that sort of stuff. We spend on average around $30,000 a year, is that right, on the property. So I think it's certainly fair that the funds, that Audubon will continue to pour all the necessary funds needed into managing the property with our trust.
So I think what we're trying to say is, we will continue to use the funds that Millicent left us, plus lots of other funds donated by other people, to do the best job possible managing the
But
property.
will Millicent's funds, I guess the point, I think where you're probably hearing where I'm going is that Millicent's funds specifically derived from the sale of the property would not then be dispersed in other areas other than.
I think they will stay in that account, and we'll use them to manage the property, along with other funds. It's not gonna be enough.
And forgive me, I don't know how the Audubon, you know, how you work internally. But certainly, I know everybody's here's concern is about the property and the maintenance.
Yeah.
And making sure that if this is something that is to move forward and that it's been deemed appropriate, legal, all of those things,
Yes.
that those funds don't just somehow disappear.
Right, for sure. Yeah.
We think that selling the house will allow us to better manage the property, not to take the money and run and do something else with it. We intend to renew our commitment and enhance our commitment to manage the property, using those funds as well as other funds that we know we're going to have to put in. And we have other funds that other people have donated that help us manage the Hamilton Preserve.
Just a note, it's nice that that's your intention. It would be nice to have a definitive statement.
That's as definitive as I know how to say it.
Well, that's what I say. I would like a definitive statement from Audubon.
So I will happily state that Maine Audubon is 100% committed to maintaining the property, the trails, everything to absolute best of our ability as the funds will allow, for sure. And that is what we have always done and what we will continue to do. We do the same thing on all of our properties, even, you know, we've got lots of properties that don't have a fund like this. So certainly we are committed to ensuring that the trails, the maintenance, the use is maintained into the future.
So bottom line, you're not restricting the proceeds from the sale to the trust?
I think the bottom line is that those proceeds won't be enough to manage this property. We know we're going to have to augment them from other funds. So yes, the monies that Melissa left us will, in proceeds
No,
from
the
the house.
400,000, let's call it 400,000. That 400,000
That will
is.
stay in the account for the Hamilton Sanctuary, And we will have to augment that with other funds to manage the property.
So there will be restricted funds to the Hamilton Sanctuary exclusively.
Will Maine Audubon take over the responsibility of organizing, because Marianne and Glenn organize the volunteer cleanups
Yes,
and trail
yeah,
maintenance?
yes.
Like
Yeah,
once.
yep, so that runs through the stewardship committee. We attend the annual stewardship committee, and we've already planned a transition with Glenn and Marianne
Okay,
to keep that going. So it'll either be, I lead that, or our land steward Liz will lead that.
okay, and put it out the same email as Marianne, and you'll have that email list too.
Yes, we already have the email list, and we run volunteer events at all of our sanctuaries. This is a little bit of a different model than we've used at other places, but I think that there's real value in that sort of place-based group. So our intention is to keep on rolling with that model.
And that little memorial garden that is right, it's next to the parking lot?
Yep.
Does that go with the sale of the house? or-
Unfortunately, it does, and that's only because of the location of the leach field and the septic tank. That's right on that hillside, so we will have to either move that or retire that garden.
Okay. And then who's putting up the chain? Is the parking lot gonna just be open all the time?
Yep, so that will follow the model that we have at all of our other sanctuaries. There is not a gate. Yep.
In prior years, I've had to call, or I've had to talk to both Marion and Glenn and the sheriff on multiple occasions about nefarious situations going on over there. So now who do I contact?
So Noah would be the contact,
Okay.
and he has cards that he will share, and if either Noah or Liz would be the primary contact. And obviously, if there's something that you think warrants the sheriff's office, then I would call the sheriff right away and then follow up with us. But,
Okay.
you know, the warden service is also another source for, depending on what sort of nefarious activities, but, you know, they are also available to assist.
So if I call the sheriff, they would contact you in the long run?
I don't know if the sheriff.
Yes, so I can speak to our relationship with the game wardens, because that's where I have the most
Yeah,
experience here
yeah.
at
And that's who I
Hamilton.
dealt with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep, so that is, as Judy said, is Evan. And so for the past couple of years, our relationship with Evan has been direct.
Okay.
So I've been in touch with Evan. For example, I think last year there was an issue with a deer head potentially.
Right.
And so that was a call, and a number of calls that I had with Evan as we sort of were troubleshooting how to head off future issues like that.
Yeah, and that was my concern.
Yeah, no pun intended, I apologize.
Yeah.
So the solution we came to was that Maine Audubon gave Evan absolute authority to press charges if they find someone hunting deer on that property. And that's the best form of deterrence that we could come up with.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Question, you mentioned that the Audubon's other properties don't have a caretaking situation. Is the Audubon currently looking to sell either buildings or lots from their other 8 properties at this time?
It's a great question. None of the other buildings have full-time residences or caretakers on property. So some of them, like Borstone, have a couple of lodges, but they're remote and people don't live in them. There's not Scarborough, although we use it as though it's our own property. It's actually owned by the state, and we just have a little clam shack there. East Point does not have any buildings on it, and Josephine Newman doesn't have any buildings on it.
It does not. The closest parallel might be the Mass Landing,
Yeah.
which has an very old house on it that's no longer habitable. So this is truly a unique among our holdings that there's a house on it.
And, you know, I'll share in my previous role with Fish and Wildlife, if we acquired a property with multiple houses, often we would carve those houses out and not take them, or we would take them down and not have to deal with the maintenance of a house. And that is consistent with how most conservation organizations are operating now. And it's very different than it was 25, 35 years ago, but in general, with Fish and Wildlife, if somebody presented us with a property that had a house, like the house is right smack in the middle, if we couldn't take the house down easily, we would probably decline that property, just because of the challenge of dealing with you know, a home and all of the expense that comes with houses. So from Maine Audubon's perspective, we don't have any properties that have caretakers and,
Well, I think my question was less about whether there was a caretaker there or not, or whether the Audubon was looking to, maybe for lack of a better term, liquidate some property beyond just the Nelson Hamilton house.
nope, it is absolutely not. In fact, we just built a new building on our property at Gilson Farm, a beautiful new education center, a native plant education center. So we're not in any way trying to liquidate properties. We're just trying to make the best decision we can for each property, and how we move forward.
I think it's important to note that we're not doing this to split off 2 acres and make a few bucks. We're doing this because it doesn't make sense for us to maintain an older house.
Sure, no, I understand the rationale behind it. I wanted to just get a better understanding of what the Audubon's current strategy was, and if it was something that you were experiencing at other locations, not just here.
Actually, our current strategy is to look at each of our sanctuaries. The Properties Committee has just finished a research project, and to look at, are there other properties we should acquire to better protect our holdings and better protect the habitat. So we're about to adopt a map for Hamilton and Newman and all of our other sanctuaries. We've adopted 2 already. We actually hope in the future to increase our land holdings, but we're probably not going to want to buy new structures.
Maybe, I'm sorry, just along your point, I don't believe the KISS property where the house was sited is under easement, so that potentially could be up for sale.
Okay, I did not aware of that. It is
I
not
think
up for
that's
sale,
carved
but,
out, and I'm wondering why that's, if you're not holding properties for future sale, why that wouldn't be an easement.
Well, most of our properties don't have easements on them. There's nothing that prevents us from selling except our mission. So we have no intention of selling that property.
But I think your core question is an important one. I don't have the answer for you. I would want to go back and check our easement map with Kennebec Estuary Land Trust. My memory, which is imperfect, is that the Kennebec Estuary Land Trust easement covers all but functionally the 2 acres that we're selling now.
I believe there's the easement is carved out around the former KISS property.
Okay, then
Yeah.
I'm happy to check that.
Yeah.
But I would agree with Michael that that the belt and suspenders approach is a really good approach, right, to have an easement on properties. But as a conservation organization, we're not generally in the land selling business.
In fact, almost never.
Quick question.
Yeah.
The 2 acres, are they all on the same
Yep.
side of the road as the house?
correct, yeah.
Thank you.
It's virtually the house and the leach field and sort of that little section.
Just north of the house or also behind the parking lot?
No,
Not
not behind
behind
the parking lot. From the parking lot over, not sure which way is north.
Yeah.
Up the
Yes,
road.
yeah,
Out toward the main road, yeah.
yeah.
Just to be specific about the nefarious possible uses. The most nefarious is possible, perhaps probable, drug use in his various drug paraphernalia, needles, etc., are found fairly frequently along the road. And inquiries to the police have yielded the response of, well, that's typical, which makes us feel uncomfortable if there is not a good system for trying to watch over the property, the eyes and ears, however. So I would encourage you to look at that part rather carefully. This is perhaps less rural than some of your other properties, and so there are people and large businesses, etc., not very far away. People look for a quiet place to attend to their own personal business, and that's a particular concern.
Yep. So we can certainly work with Warren Service on some guidance there, and I know in the past that they put up sort of remote cameras or a cell camera to just monitor and track for any uses like that, and I can certainly talk to Evan if we're having, or experiencing trouble like that, that would certainly be, you know, we could look to do something like that. And in general, you put up a little sign that says this area is monitored by surveillance camera. That does tend to cut down on those kinds of activities, and certainly we would.
I hope you could do that. Because I'm a dog walker and I see all the syringes and everything else. And a lot of it originates from that parking lot at night.
Mhm.
I was wondering if any of the properties have gates that close automatically, or if that's something that exists, or is potential if there is an issue with people being there after hours.
I don't know of any gates like, say, on maybe a timer, or anything like that. I mean, the reality, the truth is, like, okay, gate or not, if people wanna go in there, they're just gonna walk over the gate, right? If they wanna go in there to do drugs or, you know, whatever other business nefarious things, they're just gonna walk or go around the gate. I don't think the gate is going to prevent them. And I think most places, at least to have a gate at Gilson Farm, we took down the gate, just because either the gate would get stuck, it would get frozen, it would, you know, whatever, somebody would be sick and wouldn't be able to get it open, and, you know, it just became more problematic than beneficial. But I think that the gate is sort of a symbol that the area is closed, you know, and I think people will adjust to that. I do think, you know, this is a change, I recognize that, and, but the change of use to the property is not a change of use for the property. And so, people who have misused the property in the past might continue to misuse the property, but, you know, I don't think this is going to increase the misuse, if that makes sense.
The people that we're concerned about most probably aren't going to be the ones to hike around the gate. They want a quiet place to drive their vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So I would heartily, as some others would, hope that you put in a surveillance system of some sort to monitor and help assuage some of the neighbors here who are concerned at that activity.
Okay.
And I would agree with that. I think that would absolutely be necessary, because if you don't have someone there that's from the Audubon, you can't make an assumption that whoever owns that home feels that level of responsibility. That's an unrealistic expectation of them. But the expectation of the Audubon should be to ensure that the level of oversight is being maintained. You can't do that with no one there. And you know, today's world, having security cameras is really not that expensive, it's not that big of an investment to be able to provide that. And as well as, you know, you've commented that there's, you know, Liz, who I personally don't know, but there's a big difference between somebody who is normally there and someone who may be there at some point. So could you speak to, like, how often would someone actually be on site at the sanctuary checking on what's happening and making sure, like, cars aren't just showing up in the parking lot and staying there for days at a time, that type of thing?
Sure. I'll let Noah handle kind of how often somebody would be there, but again, you know, I would just share that we do have properties all over the state that have parking access, and we haven't experienced the issues that you're worried about, and so I don't, you know, I actually think that just the history of this site, it has been pretty, there's been a few issues, but it hasn't been, at least to my knowledge, we haven't had, you know, tons of complaints, and maybe Glenn and Marion were getting complaints and not sharing them.
And also the fact that they were there may have contributed to there not being issues.
Mhm.
I think that's probably a lot of people who live in that area is concerned. It's my concern, I'm a
Sure.
butter. I am concerned of not having anybody there and things happening, and the fact that they haven't happened before, I don't believe is a good assumption to make at this point.
I can speak
And I'm
a-
not familiar with some of your other
Sure,
properties in
I
the
can
state.
speak to the scheduling piece. So Liz covers, we have 8 sanctuaries, but functionally we have probably 4 that are sort of our main focus. And we think that there's tremendous potential here at Hamilton, right? So it's an area of primary focus. So Liz is here probably twice a week on a regular basis, sort of year round. We also have a seasonal stewardship person who's doing much of the trail mowing that you're seeing. So they're here another day a week. But there's also a seasonal rhythm to it, right? So as Judy mentioned, Liz is in the process of building a 140-foot raised boardwalk. So over the past 4 weeks, she's probably been here sort of 75% of her time. So there's that kind of ebb and flow of it, but it is a consistent presence once a week or often more, including in the slow months, in the winter when we're doing less field work.
And then there's the stewardship committee too,
Right.
as a local presence.
I love dogs, but will it still be a no-dog?
Correct, yes.
Policy.
None of the allowed activities will change.
So hopefully, and that was one other thing too, at Glen and Mary Ann, sometimes if people would take their dogs in and everything, they would know about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that will not change.
Okay.
And-
So there are signs there.
Yeah, and no bikes.
And
no
hopefully
out-
people respect those.
Right.
That's the
No,
problem.
and I was just at a East Point Sanctuary and watched as a family went in on their bike, and we both said, uh-oh, we're gonna go bike that trail, and then we heard the little kid say, "Dad, no bikes allowed." And they got off and walked, so,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah,
I just offer that I don't think your tentative argument of we have all these other sanctuaries and things are working out fine, because I think this amongst your sanctuaries is somewhat unique in it is so close to such a large employment base that it could be subject to more abuse than some of your others. So I would consider that.
thank you.
I actually had a question about the process, and I think that substantively you already commented on it, and I'm just reading from the excerpt from the rule that was referenced earlier. And this is from Millicent saying that she understands that there's uncertainty in the future, but making the gift and firm reliance upon the finding by the society that under present circumstances, so this would have been back in the 80s, under present circumstances, the land use which with a specific intent that the conservation and education be carried out at my present home at West Bath. That under present circumstances, such land use is feasible, practical, and will meet the enthusiastic approval and interest of the society. So, again, substantively, you commented on this, but all three of you, I appreciate that. But has there been a formal determination by Audubon that under now current circumstances, it is no longer feasible, no longer practical, and apparently does not meet with the enthusiastic approval of the society? So has there been a formal determination on this one?
That the sanctuary does not do?
That the use of the property for in accordance with our specific intent, that home be used as the basis for the conservation education, that's no longer feasible, practical, and we'll just stick with those, feasible and practical. I asked because, again, you've commented on it substantively, but since that was a condition of the grant, has a determination made that it's no longer feasible?
So the sanctuary is,
Again, no, I'm saying
The home?
it's the aspect of it. She says her specific intent that the conservation education, quote, be carried on at my present home at West Bath.
I think, and other folks can correct me, but there was at one point a consideration to have the home be a nature center, and that was brought to the planning board and not approved. And so that was, I don't know.
That was quite a while ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. So I don't believe that having a caretaker on site constitutes sort of education programs or any of those things. So I think that decision was made a long time ago. And I think that our intention is to maintain the property as Millicent wished for conservation, education, and for the use of the community. And that is still absolutely vital.
So we have not made the finding that you've said. We read, our attorneys have instructed us that that language refers to the property. Her home is the entire property, not just the building that she lived in, but everything that she donated to Audubon. So we are still very enthusiastic about our mission and about honoring her intentions and her bequest. We just don't think keeping the house is helpful to accomplish that.
No, I understand, as I said, based on the comments you've already provided, I anticipated that the determination had been made, but I was just wondering whether it had been formally made to address, just concerning someone says, well, it says, she said in her will that it would be, that she was told it was feasible and practical and would be enthusiastically approved that it would be conducted out of her home. And then
We've been advised that language is not triggered, is not relevant, because we're not trying to dispose of property. We just don't want to continue to manage the house. But we think we can honor her wishes, in fact, honor them better by not having the house and putting the effort into managing her entire home, the preserve, and making that a better place.
Thank you.
Since the home is part of a larger parcel, what are the steps that are gonna need to happen for the 2 acres to be carved out? And that's gonna be, I presume, subject to the town's approval.
We'll have to
And
get a
if the town
subdivision.
doesn't, if the town chooses not to approve that carving out, then what? And I'm not suggesting that they are, I'm just saying, is there a plan B if the town doesn't approve it?
We understand that we need approval from the planning board to create a separate lot that conforms with the zoning ordinance. And we're confident that that's something that can be approved. If it's not, we'll deal with it when that happens.
2 acres is enough for a house lot, because a lot of places that they're close to the water, sometimes I thought they said it would have to be 5 acres.
No, this is a 2 acre minimum lot size.
It's
In
2
the
acres,
center.
okay.
We were hoping it was 1 acre, but it's 2.
I think we all recognize the financial impracticality of maintaining the house, which is your true motivation here. And we understand, we're just concerned that the property is appropriately controlled
Yep.
and are concerned.
I hear you. Appreciate that.
And I think we very much want to work with you
Yeah.
to make sure that that happens.
I especially appreciate the feedback about some type of surveillance system. I'm absolutely happy to look into what that would look like in this circumstance.
So is there any proposed date you have in mind when it's gonna be going up on the market?
So we have some parts and pieces to figure out. What I can tell you is that the lease ends August 31st. And then we'll make a decision about listing after that.
We'll have some work to do on the house before it can be listed.
Has it been presented to the planning board yet?
No, it's not.
Is there a timetable on that, subject to if you need to do repairs and you've got other things to deal with? Is it sort of on the agenda for?
We have not submitted any.
So we've assembled our team, right? And that's the attorneys, that's our surveyors, that's the real estate agents, and we're working with them to establish our timeline.
There shouldn't be any problem doing it by the town staff.
But we definitely need approval to do that.
Yes, in the
I know that if you make a change to conservation easement, it has to be run past the Attorney General's office. And since.
The 2 acres we're talking about are not subject to any conservation easement.
No, I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying that because Millicent, has this trust, not a trust, but trust with $50,000, and this is a conservation issue, that maybe the Attorney General's office should look at it.
So I can speak to this as a layperson communicating an attorney's advice and guidance, right? Which is that that's not a step that we need to take in this case.
I actually have a question if no one's waiting. And I haven't had the chance to meet Glenn and Marianne, but with this transition after they've been serving the community this long, are there plans for, maybe it's even already happened and I'm not aware, ways to both recognize their service and support them as they're going through a really big change?
Yes, so there is a committee meeting next week to plan sort of recognition, some kind of recognition event for Glenn and Marianne for their service, yeah.
And they have been great.
Yeah.
And, you know, but nothing lasts forever, and at some point they were not gonna be able to be there.
And if folks, we can certainly share that information with people. That would be great.
Somebody in the back is.
I apologize for standing, I just need to stretch my back some, so I can hear better. I too have looked at the will, and I knew Millicent from the time I could remember things till she died. And she was a very thoughtful lady, we were very good friends, and she never ever told me that she wanted her house sold so Audubon can use the proceeds. And she did leave $50,000 in her will specifically for Audubon, but there was also a section here which says, all that remains of my residuary estate to the main Audubon to be added to the bequest of $50,000 I have made to the society by third hereof and held in the same trust. So that tells me that it was around $245,000 is what I understand, that actually went to Audubon. It wasn't just $50,000. And that any proceeds from the sale of the house shall be to maintain the property. It says right here, to be held in the same trust. So that's pretty clear to me. She also talks about, well, I'm being a little redundant, you mentioned this, within my specific intent that such promotion be carried on at my present home at West Bath, and she did mean her house. That was her home. So, also, she did an addition to her will 3 days before she died, actually, and she specifies the first caretaker. So it was pretty clear that her intent was that there be a caretaker there. She does, and she provided significant funds for that. I also have looked at some other things, other documents, and in 1992, there was a proceeding before the town that was pretty, where the Audubon wanted a special exception. And there was a Mr. Robert Savage who represented Audubon. And in the minutes, it's about 11 pages long, I guess it's dated September 8th, 1992. Mr. Savage said he never, this is a direct quote from what he said, and he's a representative of Audubon. Mr. Savage said he never had any intention of leaving it unmanaged. There would always have live-in caretakers. That's from 1992. Always have live-in caretakers. And the concern is that without people there, that's going to be a big problem. It's going to be another Sawyer Park, it's going to be another Witch Spring Hill pull-out. And in 1992, one of the abutters here talked about the problems that might give if there wasn't anybody living there. And I think that's still true today. And there's another point on page 11 of these minutes that Mr. Savage told everyone to keep in mind he had already agreed to put a gate across the parking lot and having it closed off at dusk. And that's being done. And I think that's a huge deterrent. This is a residential area. We don't need those kinds of activities. So again, in the management plan, which has been renewed 3 or 4 times, I'm sure you're all familiar with it, at Audubon, they talk about these points, and they address them. And my understanding is that several times before, Audubon has considered selling the house, and every time they said no. They finally decided, no, we're not gonna do that. And I think that was the right decision. I think the right decision is to have a caretaker there and to have them in the house and maintaining the property. It doesn't have to be a full-time job necessarily, but she did provide sufficient funds for that, and she did designate the first caretaker. So in my mind, it's pretty clear what the intent is. Now, what a judge would say or what the legal people would say, is anybody's guess. I've had an attorney tell me I could make an argument for that. In other words, they can always argue about the problem. But I think it's pretty clear to me that Millicent intended for there to be an on-site caretaker, that her home remain with Audubon, and she talked at length with Audubon. She says, in firm reliance upon the finding by the society that under present circumstances, such land use is feasible, practical, and will meet the enthusiastic approval and interest of the society. And I don't think her intent was to totally fund the Audubon's use of this property. I think it was to contribute to it. And Audubon accepted that responsibility, and frankly, I think selling the house is changing that, not accepting the responsibility for that. There does need to be a caretaker there.
We discussed all of that with our attorneys. They also pointed out that at Millicent's instructions, we gave Ann Johnson, at the time, she's Ann Hayden now, a right of first refusal to purchase the house if we ever wanted to sell it. And our attorneys have said, the fact that she asked you to give someone a right of first refusal anticipates that you could sell the
Millicent
house.
didn't give that to her. That was done in July, and Millicent
She
died
asked us to do that.
April 29th.
She asked us to do that for Ann. She wanted Ann to have the house.
She was deceased on the date of that
She asked us
first
before
refusal.
she was
I don't
deceased.
know how she could do it from the grave, but.
She didn't do it from the grave, she did it while she was alive.
No, that document is dated in July
She asked us to do it before she
1986.
died. And we honored her wishes and did it, and now Ann has said, I don't wish to purchase the house.
No, I understand that she's released her right of first refusal. Millicent was not a party to that document. She did not sign it. It was done after her death. So I really question whether or not, what effect, what indication that might be of her feelings, because she was not with us anymore. So I really question if that was her intent to sell the house. And in her will, she does not say anywhere that she wants the house to be sold.
No, we understand that.
She does entertain, though, what's to be done should Audubon sell the property, and that the proceeds from the sale are not to go to her heirs.
See, I'm sorry.
She does articulate that if Audubon at some unforeseen time chooses to sell, then the proceeds are not to go to her heirs. So she certainly did contemplate that at some point in the future, different decision may need to be made. And
What she says is, to continue the use of my West Bath land as above directed, I do not wish title to revert to my heirs. But I direct that terms of this advise and bequeath be carried out within my general intent to promote conservation, education, and so forth.
I think that's what we're doing. We're continuing.
So it doesn't say her home or her house, but the sale of that. What she's talking about is the general property, and that she doesn't want any of those assets to go to whomever it is she might have. So I disagree with your decision. I think there's others here that feel the same way. And I would very much like for the Audubon to reconsider selling that house. Now, she provided significant funds for that. Depending on how the funds are managed and used, there may be enough money there, there may not be, but I don't think her intent was ever to provide in perpetuity funds to maintain that property. I don't think that was their intent at all.
We don't think so either. In fact, that's not been the case. We've put in lots of additional funds. But we just think that if we are going to seriously honor her wishes and manage the property the way she wanted us to, the house is an impediment.
How do you get around the fact that she appointed the first caretaker? And that she wanted a caretaker there? How do you get around that? I find that a hard hill to climb over.
I would just offer that that was a long time ago. And the way conservation projects were proposed back then, that was much more standard. And that is not standard anymore.
Well, I've seen this before. Somebody has a trust and they give some money to a group or whatever. And I've seen this before. And it never comes out good unless there's an ironclad, like Baxter State Park and so forth, a trust agreement done. The wishes of the person giving the property or whatever are never, eventually people forget, they die, and things change. And even though, unfortunately, the plan is not to have a caretaker at these properties, I believe that was Millicent's intent, to have a caretaker there and to look after the property. And there are other reasons to have that. One is that, it can become a real problem with illicit behavior at that location. And that's a big concern for us and all the abutters there.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions, comments, or anything else you guys would like to
Would a reasonable option be for Audubon to hold on to the house and then put caretakers in there who would pay rent? So rents are pretty high in this area now, so I don't know what that would be, say $3,000 a month. And suppose they paid you $1,500 a month, which could help maintain the place, and you'd have somebody on site. Have you considered that?
We have considered that. Unfortunately, given the age of the house and the condition of the house, it's going to take a lot more resources than rent would provide. As the owner and landlord, we would have to maintain the house, and we would want to maintain it to good standards. And that's just going to be...
Well, you are in effect a landlord while the Glenn and Mary Ann were there.
Yes, and we put a lot of money into the house during that period of time. So going forward, we got to a point where we just decided this does not make sense for us to own an old house. It makes sense to use the resources that Melissa gave us to manage the property, not the house. It's as simple as that. And we remain committed to managing the property as best as we possibly can. We will work with you to avoid problems, to respond to problems. But I don't think having a gate up and a caretaker in the house next door is going to prevent having those problems. Someone said they see needles along the road all the time. Anyway, I mean, this is the world we live in. But we will do our best to work with you and address any problems that come up and do our best to try and prevent problems. We're not trying to walk away from the Hamilton Sanctuary or from Millicent's wishes. We're trying to do a better job implementing our will. And unfortunately, I think we've come to the conclusion, after a lot of thought, that keeping the house gets in the way of our doing as good a job as we could.
I do have to say though, there have been times I've seen needles in the actual parking lot and knocked on the door and brought it to Marion and Glenn's attention. Glenn has actually gone out and talked to people in trucks and, when I've seen things, and I was glad he was there. Which is probably something he wouldn't have reported to you because he took care of the problem. Because I was there early in the morning when, because I walked the dog really early. And he was home and he hadn't gone to work yet. So it was always taken care of. He would question people and, all of a sudden they'd pull out.
I'd also like to point out that any hypodermic needles that are being found, that is a symptom of the fact that there's a destination for the person to go and use and then discard of their needle as they leave. So it's the chicken and the egg. That really is what we're trying to highlight to you, that parking lot unsupervised creates a liability that apparently the Audubon is okay with at your other locations as well. But it's something that, because it's in our neighborhood, is pointing to us.
We appreciate that.
And that it shouldn't be discarded as, well, this is the world that we live in.
Yeah, and I have to add that when you talk about the other properties that you have and gates and attractive nuisance type business going on, how many abutters does the Hamilton have? It's upwards of 25, 30 properties. It's not, I don't know in comparison to your other properties that it's anywhere close in the number of abutters that are affected.
I think it's comparable to Mass Landing,
Or
which is
East
the
Point.
big development next to us, and to East Point.
Sure. You know, and I would say from just the beyond Audubon, you know, from other conservation organizations, local land trusts, that there's lots of community land trusts now, the Brunswick Thompson Land Trust, the Royal River Land Trust, you know, the Freeport Land Trust and Falmouth, they all acquire and protect properties in and around. The whole point is to do them in and around communities so that it's a community resource. And they all have similar sized parking lots, you know, or small, you know, 10-car or so parking lots. And this approach to community open space and conservation areas in proximity to where people live, getting people out into nature is core to what we do at Maine Audubon. And so, you know, we really want more properties in and around where people live. It's nice to have remote areas to go to find solitude, but most of us don't have time to do that on a daily basis, but we are likely to walk. You know, where I lived in Freeport, I walked at Florida Lake almost 4 times a week, and lots and lots of neighbors, but you know, you could go in and have a beautiful walk and sort of connect with nature, and I didn't have to drive 40 minutes to get there. So that model is very common in this area now, of having, you know, conservation land, protected space in and around neighborhoods where large numbers of people live. I recognize that this is a change and people are anxious and concerned about mostly from what I hear, nefarious behavior after hours. And so we will do everything we can to try and ensure that none of that happens, and if it does, that we will react and respond to that in a way that is acceptable to the community.
We also find that the more our sanctuaries get used, particularly by local people, the lower the level of problems. I have another hat, I'm a trustee of Portland Trails, and Portland Trails manages a 100-mile network of trails throughout the greater Portland area. And when we approach landowners by getting a trail lease, their first concern is, who are you going to bring onto my property? What are they going to do? And in our experience, the more these properties get used by the community, the better off we all are, because there's lots of eyes and ears, and it's the properties that aren't used as heavily that it's easier to get away with something. But if there are neighbors that are there first thing in the morning, you're there to see something. If there's a lot of use throughout the day, during the week and on the weekends, it makes it easier to manage those properties. And that's why most conservation groups have evolved beyond the caretaker model, because caretakers have other full-time jobs. They're not there all the time, even if they're living right there. And so we think the new model works better, and we're very much looking forward to working with you to make it work here.
Well, another big concern for me too is with Evan, we had problems because we recognized a certain truck that we suspected after that deer incident, was probably illegally hunting there. And we're very close by, and we have a lot of acreage, and it makes me nervous to know that there's illegal hunters out there, you know, and we have deer all over our yards, you know. And thank goodness that Glenn was there and got the license plate, and, you know, I was able, you know, we matched up license plates, we worked together a lot of times and trying to find this illegal hunting that was going on. And it concerns me because I walk my dog out in the back, you know, we have 32 acres and, you know, who's out there, you know, shooting the deer?
I'd love to be a resource for those conversations.
And I really like the idea of looking into surveillance cameras. I think that has a lot of merit. I think that could help us, you know, have, you know, around the clock eyes and ears, and as well as document. If somebody pulls into that parking lot, you know, then you get a license plate number, and
It would be great if you can angle those for license plates, those cameras.
You can. Do you have a schematic of the 2 acres that you're carving out around the house?
I don't have it with us, but so our land surveyors have mocked that up for us.
Can you describe the boundaries?
Sure. So obviously it runs along Foster's Point Road. The back boundary primarily is Rockhaven Drive, that back line of the private camp road. And then the line that sort of creates the triangle, right, that closes off the lot. So if you view Foster's Point and Rockhaven as two lines of the triangle, the base is right in front of the septic tank. So when you're in the Hamilton parking lot to your right, there's a slight hill, and that's where the leach field is located. So that property line, that new property line, will be right at the base of that leach field, so mid-slope on that hump, and then runs from Foster's Point to Rockhaven Drive.
Will there be any restrictions or anything written into, let's just assume everything moves forward and you list the home for sale. Will there be any restrictions or anything in the deed to any new owner about anything relative to this parcel? And I'm speaking directly because I own property that is in that point that you're speaking about. So
Can you bracket me in on where you're
on Rockhaven Drive,
Yep.
there is, when you enter the property, there is a garage on the left side. I own it.
Okay.
And so this, what you're describing here, now creates the situation where I purchased the property, that it was Audubon sanctuary land, and now it's going to become part of somebody's.
what kind of restrictions were you into?
I don't know, I'm just,
It's a tree lot.
just hearing this makes me very, very now I'm even more nervous because it is very thickly wooded. And, you know, obviously I know that there are restrictions on taking trees down, you know, in different circumstances, but now my piece of property is gonna be, I'm gonna have a neighbor, where I just bought it and I don't have a neighbor. I have the Audubon sanctuary.
Well, we're your neighbor.
You are, but you're not going to build something or take things down or affect
so to like
my.
minimize additional structures.
Exactly. So now I'm,
Tree clearance.
I'm now more nervous than I was when I walked in, not knowing what the 2-acre parcel was going to be. And that will, you know, as far as, I'm not even sure what restrictions there might be placed on it, but I'm now heightened. And
I think the answer is that whoever would buy that lot, if it was created and sold, would be subject to the same exact restrictions that you're subject to, whatever the local restrictions are. I'm not familiar with them.
Right, but when it's conservation, which it is now, that's different than carving out a 2-acre lot and just selling it to a stranger who can do whatever they want with it within, obviously, you know, some restrictions about cutting down some trees. They're gonna be right on top of me. And that's, when I bought the property, that's not what,
I mean,
That's not what I bought.
assume the town has, you know, setbacks from from your property line and those sorts of things that, you know,
Would
residents
and again, I'm just thinking aloud, would the Audubon be open to additional discussions around the impact of abutters to this 2-acre parcel? Because it's a number of people on Rock Haven. I happen to own a small piece that's on the parcel side of the road, as well as on the water side.
Well, why don't we
But
look at
I just wanna understand if there's an opportunity for further discussion for those of us that directly have property.
why don't we look at what the local restrictions are, if there are what the setbacks are, what the tree cutting requirements, you know, what the.
Okay, I understand for you about the town, but are you willing to have discussions with me, a homeowner of property that is directly adjacent to this parcel?
Well, I think
I'm not making I'm not asking you to make promises, I'm
I
asking
think yes,
for you to
but
commit to a
obviously,
conversation.
we'd like that to be an informed conversation,
Yeah,
find out
of
what the
course.
restrictions are now. And
Okay.
if you want to talk about, you know, is there a need to have more restrictions, I think we'd be open to that conversation.
Thank you.
So I just want to make it clear, your plan right now is not to sell the property with a conservation easement on it,
Correct.
which would obviously lower the value.
It doesn't have a conservation easement.
But if Audubon was to put a conservation easement on it and then sell it, which you can do.
Well, there's not much you could do on that property, it's a 2-acre parcel, it's a minimum size
So
parcel.
you
You
can't
can't
put a
subdivide it.
conservation easement on a piece of property that has a home out
Who would
on
be
it,
the
that
third
you,
party? Who would be the easement holder?
I guess it would be you.
Right.
If
Well,
you find another
so
land
you
trust
have
who
to have
wanted
a
to.
third party easement.
Usually
So if it's
conservation easements prohibit further subdivision of the property, they prohibit
Yeah,
additional development of the property. I don't think there's a whole lot more you can do with that property,
yeah.
on 2 acres. So I'm not sure
I'm
what the
just
point of a
trying to make it clear
conservation
that
easement would be.
that's not your plan.
Correct.
Okay.
We did not,
Plan to sell it with a conservation easement.
no.
Okay.
I mean, there's not one on there now.
And it's a minimum lot size.
So there are challenges to putting easements on small lots like that, because it does provide a tax benefit for the landowner, and if there's not a conservation value, then I don't know of an organization that would take that easement.
Yeah. No, I was just going off this abutters question.
Yeah, sure, yeah, I
And,
think we're.
I mean, that would
happy
make it pretty clear, cut and dry, like
Top.
if it's not gonna have a conservation easement. it's
So,
not
I
going
mean,
to.
the other side of that is, so, you know, there are lots of, conservation easement doesn't mean you can't cut trees. You can have a conservation easement, you know, good part of the northern part of the state has some kind of conservation easement on it, and it's actively forested, right? So, conservation easement doesn't necessarily restrict your ability to
Yeah, I mean,
cut trees. It, you know,
They're
fits
all
your
tailored
concerns.
to whatever the land trust
Right.
wants with
Right.
whatever property, but.
Right, so I think we're happy to have a conversation to look at what the local ordinance and restrictions are, but our intent is not to try to find a third party to hold an additional easement on the 2 acres that we have identified.
To this vein of conversation though, so the property that Kimberly and I live at, it was initially owned by Millicent Hamilton. And she created some things when she made that parcel. She put some things on our deed that.
Which is entirely different from a conservation easement.
That's fair, but it does also prevent us from, for example, affecting the vegetation along a larger border than local ordinances require. And maybe an overture in that nature would help some of the people who live along Rock Haven understand the true nature of what the Audubon Society is trying to accomplish here, while being sensitive to the neighborhood and the proximity.
If you could share those restrictions with
That'd
us,
be great.
we'd be happy to look at them, and that, maybe that's, because I think conservation easement isn't the right tool. I think if you wanted to have any additional protections that maybe local ordinances don't provide.
Yeah, I mean,
deed
I'd be
restrictions.
happy to do it, but it was something that Millicent specified for a property that abutted her, I use this term loosely, her Audubon sanctuary.
Right.
Because she understood that there was potential for future modifications to that property and expansions of it, so.
I'd be very
she wanted
interested
to
in looking
protect the
at the
property.
restrictions.
Okay.
So is Audubon going to put enough money into, if they do sell it, you're gonna have to put a lot of money into that house? Is there enough money so new owners might not say, oh, we don't like an old house, we're just gonna tear it down and move back into the woods closer to Rock Haven? I mean, are you gonna put enough money into it or just sell it as is?
So our real estate agents have given us some guidance about what makes sense to do. As you probably noticed, we painted the entire house last year and actually did a bunch of rock repair.
You put the new roof on it?
Exactly, yes, yeah, exactly. So we've done quite a significant refresh. And so in the eyes of our realtors, their advice is that we've done a refresh that sort of gives people a vision of what it could be, but that to do a full interior gut might not actually sort of speak to an individual. It might be that a person wants a historic house to sort of shape as their own.
So hopefully not just say we want to tear it down because we don't like an old house and we're going to move.
Or just build on the footprint.
Yeah, or yeah. So that was just, because that's happened, I mean, the house down the road moved the old log cabin. Did they move it or sell it or?
Took it apart.
No, they moved it over, it's across the street, in the neighborhood across the street,
Okay.
yeah.
So I mean, that'd be a hard house to move, but I mean, people did move a house down the road.
Are there any additional questions?
Very quickly, you all said you'd look into cameras. Can you give us a commitment that you'll put up cameras? Or do you have to go to the board?
No, no.
I don't think we'll give you a commitment because you need internet access for cameras, so we'd have to find out whether we can get internet access and what kind of cameras are available. I think it's worth exploring. And
yeah, I feel quite confident there's a solution there. I can't promise that solution will appear in the parking lot tomorrow, but I can promise that I can find a solution.
Okay, thank you.
And just a quick thing with Memorial Garden, it is a memorial garden, so I urge you to move it and not just get rid of it.
Yeah, so there's, as you're in the parking lot to the left, there's the open field. Some of that is low lying and there's a drainage ditch, but the upper half is upland with decent soils, and that to me feels like a potentially sound location for that garden.
Yes.
I think there was a lot of good concern and there could be some win-wins here, but there was a lot of great questions and concerns that were brought forward. Is there another date there could be follow-up to some suggestions, some solutions, some more conversation to when, for you to come back and sort of present what you find? Because I think that you spoke very well to her intent, I feel, that I wasn't even aware of. I very much appreciate that. And selling the house, and all of us that are but you know, the Rock Haven Drive especially, we'd love to see it as is. Do what you want with the house, but leave the property, you know, to say, I think that's in your best interest as well, and what we have. So there could be some wins here. I'd love to see you come back and continue this conversation. And I don't know how we can get back on the agenda, but I think it would be, versus having some one-off conversations. I really appreciate
I think
that.
that makes sense.
Sure.
I'd be happy to do that. We have some homework to do. There's some great suggestions.
Before everything is finalized and signed off on, and the house is up for sale.
Sure, we would be happy to put it on the agenda again, invite you guys back.
When is your next meeting?
Well, we haven't fixed the date exactly yet, but the proposed date is September 14th. It's another Monday.
So maybe not everything buttoned up, but here's some additional information, and I very much appreciate the dialogue.
I'll be away, I can't be available if you guys can make that.
No, well,
Okay, then I suggest that, I propose that we wrap this portion of new business of the meeting up, but anybody who would like to leave is welcome to go. Do you want to pass out business cards, or?
Yeah, I'll do the stack here and also pass them.
You're not kidding when you say you put a stack.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Nice to see you. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Instead of having to see you.
Well,